Right, so now we're on the dashboard. Let's go on to our blog over here, and this is the one we want to have, which is the recreate deployment strategy. So, before we do that, we need some required tools. So, first of all, we need the Azure CLI. So, essentially, when we're working with a project on our VS Code, we want to then be able to deploy using the terminal instead of going into the dashboard over here and doing deployments. You can see here as well, deploy a custom whatever you need to deploy. So, you can see here, deploy a custom template, but we're doing everything in our VS Code. And then we also need kubectl, which is a command line interface for being able to run commands on Kubernetes clusters. So if you want to know further on that, what I'll do is I'll do a video on what Kubernetes is, and also the CLI is the command line interface for managing Azure resources efficiently. So that's what we will be needing on our machines. I've already installed Azure CLI, but if you click here and then you just install it with Homebrew. If you don't have Homebrew, all you need to do is click this Homebrew package manager. So if we open that up, and all you need to do is copy this and then paste it into your terminal. But again, I've already got that installed. So if we go back, let's close Homebrew off, and then if you scroll down, you don't want this, you want to click back, and then if you go and click on the install on Mac section again, and then you just basically run this command, which is brew update and brew install Azure CLI. So then you should be able to log in to your Azure CLI in your VS Code terminal. And then again, we need to install kubectl. This is so that we can apply and create the deployment. So that's what we also need. So I'll quickly go into kubectl, and it's a command line tool similar to Azure. How to install it. So, and all you need to do is in the search this site just to install and press enter, and then this will show you how to install the tool. So let's click on this one and install kubectl on your relevant machine. So for me it's Mac, and all I want to do is install with Homebrew because that's what we have downloaded, and it's quite simple. All you would do is basically do brew install kubectl. So let's go ahead and paste that in and run it. So once you have Homebrew, it installs both the Azure CLI and also kubectl, which is the Kubernetes CLI. And now that's installed, we are ready to go. Let's go ahead and open a project. So let's first of all go into our YouTube folder. So cd into YouTube, and I want to choose a project that I have done that we want to be able to deploy. So let's do a simple one. So let's do the multi-brand YT. So multi-brand-YT. And this basically is the multi-brand website that I created and deployed using Vercel. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new application, and then we're going to deploy that to Next.js. So what we'll do is we'll just create a simple V app, and then we'll deploy that onto Microsoft Azure. So let me do Control R, and then I'm going to create a V app. So let me do npm create v latest, and this is going to be the deployment app. This is the name that I'm going to call it, and then I'm going to use a template, so dash dash template, and the template I'm going to use is react dash ts. So if I press enter on that, we just follow the steps. So actually what we need to do, and let me just quickly zoom in, is you can see here it's required node 18, but I'm on node 14. So let me just log out of this and do node dash v, and we want to do nvm use node version 20 because we should be using the latest one anyway. And then essentially run this again. We want to use React with TypeScript, and then that is now scaffolded. All we need to do is follow the steps. So cd deployment dash app, and then we do code space dot. So this will open a VS Code terminal up for us. And let me just bring this in. So this is the project that we have scaffolded together. So using V, and I don't want to make any changes. So this is what it should be like. But let me actually open a new terminal, and we want to do first of all npm install to install all of the dependencies. And before we do that, actually let's check the node version once again. So let's do npm use node 20, and then just run npm install or npm I. This will install everything for us, and then that essentially is the boilerplate that we have, and this is the repo that we want to use to deploy our sites on. So now we've done that, what I want to do is just quickly clear this. And if you remember, we installed the Azure CLI. So what we now want to do is log into our Azure CLI or our Azure interface. So let me close this down. And here we have our Microsoft Azure account. This is what we want to log into. So all you need to do in our terminal is do az space login, and press enter, and it says the command is not found. So let's double check why that is. So let's try install that again. So it was the with Homebrew we want to do it with. So let me do open the tab again, and let's copy this command and paste it in here. And we've got an error. So let me just quickly do brew tap to repair, and this will repair everything for us. And then all I want to do now is do brew update and brew install Azure CLI. And now this is ensuring that we install our Azure CLI. So if you have already installed it, that's fine and it's working for you. But if it's not, then just do what I'm doing here now. So essentially it's going to install everything for us again in our VS Code. And if we go in extensions, actually, let's search for Azure in here to see if they have extensions. And you can see we have the all of these Azure extensions that we can use. So databases, storage, and so on. But this one here is basically get web site hosting, SQL and MongoDB, data, Docker containers, and so on. So what I'm going to do is it says here it's got 1.3 million downloads. So let me just install that as well, because why not? And then what else do we have? CLI tools. So this is a good one actually we need. So let me install that as well. Azure CLI tools. So you can see here it's basically tells you create a web app and so on. And what this does is so this creates a scrapbook for developing and running commands with Azure CLI. So that's quite handy. You can save all these commands in here, and there's quite frequent updates as well. So now let's just wait for this all to install and we will be right back. Right, so now that's installed, let's go ahead and log in to Azure. So let me just close this down a little bit and clear the terminal. So now we would do AZ login and press enter. We should be logging into our Azure account. So let's just wait for this to work. So now it's opened our browser and we can click on the Azure account. And now it says you're logged in. So let's close this off. And if we go into here, you can see our web browser is open. So we've confirmed everything. And then we can see our Azure subscription in here with our subscription ID, which I will then delete, and select a subscription tenant, type a number, or enter for no changes. So let's just press enter. So now essentially what we've done is we've logged in now. So right, so now that we've logged in, what we want to do is create a resource group in our Azure CLI. So first of all, let's do a command that checks the VM. So the VM that we want to have, which stands for virtual machine, is the standard DSV2, which is like the free one. So let me paste in this command, which lists what regions that we can create our resource group in. So if we run this command, which is up here, and now you can see this is the table that was generated. So if we scroll down, the one I want to choose is UK South, this one over here. So let's do a command now. So let me just clear everything out. And then what we need to do is paste this in, which is the group that we want to create. And it was UK South. And then also I want to create the name for my resource group, which is going to be named Imran's V app, like this, and press enter. And now you can see our resource group has been created. So let's just verify that has worked. So let me go in here and refresh our Azure dashboard. And then if we click into here, which is resource group, but if you don't see that, then just search it in here and it should come up. So let me go into here. You can see Imran's V app, which is in UK South. That's fine. So now that we've created our resource group, we need to now create our AKS, which is the Kubernetes service. And if we go into our dashboard, and I'll show you how it is on our dashboard here. So this is our resource group, and then we can click create resources, and then this will take us to the marketplace. So this is where we can install or add all of our services, and this is where they are all available. So in here, all I want to do is search for AKS, and if we click on Azure Kubernetes service, you can now see this is the list that we have. So what we need is the Azure Kubernetes service, which is a managed cluster with a Kubernetes orchestrator for container deployments. So that's what we need. So what we want to do is add that in the CLI, so in our terminal over here. So the command we need, I'll just bring it in. So let me just quickly bring that in. And there's a few configurations we need to make with this. So the size of the VM that we need is the standard B2S. The node count is 1. And then we need our AKS cluster name. So I'm just going to call this Imran's cluster, like that. And then there's also the resource group name that we need to update as well. So in our case, it's the resource group we created, which is above, which is the Imran's Veet app, like that. And that should be fine. So let's press enter. And then this will basically create our AKS cluster. So now you can see it's running, and what will happen is it will create the cluster, and once that's done, I will be right back. Right, so now that has created our AKS cluster. Let's just go into our Azure dashboard and just double check that's created. So let's go in here, and in our home, so in our resource group, should I say, we can see here now, if we go into the Imran's V app, we now have the cluster that we created called Imran's cluster. So this is the Kubernetes service that we have over here. So now what we want to do is, you can see as well, there's some other default resource groups that we have, but this is the one we're interested in. So MSCI UK South Imran's cluster, which is a data collection rule. So let's go ahead and check that out as well. Essentially, this is in the resource group we have in UK South, and this is some more information on why it is. And you can also see in JSON view, but we'll just leave that for now. What we want to do, click into Imran's cluster, and you can see what is going on in here. We have all of these node pools in here, so we only have one because we're using the free tier. And then we also have the version and also the other information for our AKS cluster. We also have the CIDR range of the pod and the service, which is basically the range that we have within the IP. So this is the /16 CIDR range in here, and we also have our service IP for our DNS. So this is all of the information that we need. The main thing is the status is succeeded and it is running, so that's fine. So now what we want to do is the next step of our AKS, which is to get the credentials for our AKS in our terminal. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's first of all check the name of this cluster. So that is the Imran's cluster, and that's what we need to have to hand. So let me just clear this out and paste in the command. So the cluster name is the one I've just read out, which is Imran's cluster. And then also the resource group is Imran's V app, if you remember that. So Imran's V app, like this. So now if we press enter, so we are getting our credentials. So it says he emerged Imran's cluster as current context. So we've done that. So we've got the credentials. And now what we want to do is basically create a new file in our code. So in here, what I'm going to do is create a file. So this is going to be called deployment.yaml, and this is the YAML file that basically will deploy our code to Kubernetes. So let me just bring in our YAML file. So let me just copy this and paste it. Actually, not in there. I don't want it in there. And paste it in here like so. And let me save that and also delete everything in our terminal. So now this is our YAML file. Let's just hover over the errors. So it's saying here missing property selector. So all we can do is just do quick fix and use Copilot just to fix this. So if we scroll down, it basically adds the selector. So let's accept that. And then this one, again, we could fix with Copilot just so we not focusing on this too much and focusing more on the deployment side of things. So again, now we can see we've got our YAML file in here. This file is for deployment. The metadata is Imran's VApp deployment. The spec and the selectors information is in here. Then we have the container name, which is Imran's VApp container. And then we also have the image, which is Imran's VApp image of the latest. So let me just save everything in here. Now, this is where kubectl comes in, and this is where we need to deploy or apply for the deployment. So let me just paste in the command here, which is kubectl apply -f deployment.yaml. So let's now press enter on that, and now it says here deployments are created over here, and there's one more command we need to do. This is to basically do the recreate deployment. So let me just copy this and paste it in. So it's kubectl rollout restart deployment / example deployment, or in our case, what we should do is deployment / and then the deployment name. So in our case, what did we call this? Imran's VApp deployment. So let me just add that in here like that and press enter. So now it says deployments are restarted. So now that's deployed, let's go into our dashboard And let's go into our cluster. And then if we go onto the Kubernetes resources over here, you can see this list over here. And in workload, let's click on that. And then you can see here, this is what we have. This is the Imran's app deployment. So you can see it's clicked through here. So now you can see here in this deployment strategy, the strategy is the rolling update strategy. So that's what we are doing, which was basically rollout restart and then the deployment itself. So that is how you would do it. So now what you can do is you got the overview here. Let's click refresh, and it's still pending. So if we go into events, you can see the events of what's happening over here. You can see the YAML file over here of what's going on. So essentially that is how you would recreate a deployment. As you can see here now, the deployment has restarted. In our case, we were doing the rollout deployment. So that's how you would do that. So if I go into the cluster, so that's where our deployments are managed. In the Kubernetes resource in here, in workloads, you should see this name, which is Imran's app deployment. So you can see here Imran's app deployments. If you click through, you have the overview of the deployment over here. So it says rolling update strategy, 25% max, and then 25% max surge. So basically, this is a rolling update. All of this information is here, it's pending. I'm not going to actually deploy, but essentially, this is how it will work. And then that essentially is how you would recreate your deployment. So again, it says here in the implementation, kubectl rollout, restart deployment, and then the deployment name. So that's how you would do that. Essentially, it's the same for the rolling update strategy, but basically you could amend your YAML file where you would kind of give the strategy type as a rolling update. So it's kind of the same strategy where you would implement and then just change the YAML file to update that. So we've covered two there, which is the rolling deployment or the rolling update deployment strategy, and also recreate deployment strategy. So this is essentially recreating the last deployment. So that's how you would do that.